Everybody. We have a exciting episode of the podcast to bring you guys today. We have Vida Delrahim, which is one of the co-founders of WeNatal, which is a direct-to-consumer prenatal supplement and nutrition company based on men and women's fertility and health. And I had the opportunity to meet Vida at Founders Made a while back, and there were a few extenuating circumstances in getting this interview on the books, but we are super excited to hear a little bit about her and her founder's journey today. So, Vida, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we talked a little bit off camera. I think we've got some, great stories to tell about our mutual backgrounds and our mutual journeys with the fertility industry and just our own experiences with that. But I want to start off with you. Tell me a little bit more about yourself. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And then what got it in your head to start this amazing company?
I love it. So I was born in Chicago, Illinois, but we
Nice.
moved to LA when I was like one. So I'm pretty much LA born and bred. Grew up in the Valley, went to UCLA and lived in LA pretty much my whole life. I did do a short
Wow.
stunt in Portland, and I'll talk about my 20-year Nike career, which is kind of what led to WeNatal. But as it goes, yeah, I'm an LA girl. Where,
Let's go.
Dylan, where do you live? You're New York also?
Southern California for the formative years, so junior high, high school, college in Santa Barbara, 10 years in LA, and then I've been back and forth between Santa Barbara and San Diego for the last
Oh,
10 years.
two
So,
beautiful cities.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
those
beautiful
are
spots. But
places I'd love to go.
I'm in LA every week, either for my work or my kids are actors and actresses. We're going to be in LA for 21 days in July. My daughter is doing her first feature, so that's super exciting.
Congrats. That's amazing. Well,
Thank
yeah,
you, thank you.
LA is the place to be for that
There it is.
profession.
That's the
So
spot. We'll probably be back, as they continue to get older and get more involved in, the acting world. We'll probably get back.
I
But yeah, I love LA.
love LA. So ditto. So
Yep.
I've lived here pretty much my whole life, minus a few stunts. And how I got into this crazy world, honestly, I never imagined myself in the supplement space. And I'll tell you how it came
Mm,
about. So I spent 20 years in my corporate career at Nike. That's actually where Ronit, my best friend, and I met. And I
wow.
worked alongside like a dream job, right? How many people like obsessed with Nike and the marketing? And I was a marketer. And so I interned for them for multiple years. I got my foot in the door and literally got to work alongside some of the best athletes in the world, obsess their craft. I put on some of the biggest marketing events, some of the biggest sporting events for Nike, and really got to dive in deep with like what it takes to be great, what it takes to really inspire and engage. And so Ronit and I met there, and ironically, like when I started to try for a baby, despite having all this knowledge of like putting your best foot forward, and you don't just like decide to run a marathon. You literally get the shoes, get the coach,
Train.
a
Yeah,
training
yeah.
plan, nutrition, recovery. There's so much that goes into it. But when I was starting to have a kid with my husband, we were like, we're healthy, we're, fairly decent age. Let's
Yep.
just try. It didn't even dawn on me that we should like change anything in our lifestyle. And so on our path to becoming parents, got pregnant and passed the first trimester, told everyone, went in for a routine checkup around 14 weeks. And what most people wait for is like that beautiful heartbeat and like that exciting sound. And my room was like silence. My OBGYN's face dropped and it was just like, I'm
Oh,
so sorry. There's no
mm,
heartbeat. And Dylan, it was by far one of the most devastating, gut wrenching, like sucker punches I've ever gotten in my life. I was devastated, mortified. I spent months after, like most women, which is a true blame game. What is something I ate?
mm.
Too much coffee, the stress at work, and I mean, I could have picked any of those things, but like that anguish, and your doctor just kind of tells you it's common, it just happens, keep trying. There was really no answers. But in my story, luckily for me, Ronit was my best friend, and she left Nike to work alongside Dr. Mark Hyman, who's a huge functional medicine practitioner, really teaches you about root cause medicine. And he kind of got her to go deeper in the research, and she wasn't she was basically like, things that are common, there still can be help. And so she encouraged me to look deeper into my lab work and deeper at my thyroid and all this stuff. I found out I had Hashimoto's. I ended up successfully
Mm,
treating that, went on to have a healthy baby girl. And so, like, side note, so much of our health journey does need to rely on ourselves to go deeper. What's common isn't what's optimal. And so I learned
mm,
that the hard way with this loss. And then Ronit and I had girls around the same time. Mine was a year younger. And in early 2020, the same thing happened. I was like ready for my second child. This time I thought I knew more. So I was prepping my body, my health, taking the right supplements, all that. And sadly, it was followed by another miscarriage. I went to
oh,
the
so
doctor,
sorry.
and thank you. It was, a moment where you just take the answers as is, that this is just meant to happen. But the thing that changed this journey was that a week later, Ronit went to an appointment and also miscarried.
Mm,
And unbeknownst to me, I didn't even know she was pregnant. She called me. She said the same thing happened to me. And because she came from this functional medicine side, she went deep into research. Like, there's got to be a root cause. There's got to be a reason. And I kind of just took it as is.
hmm.
And I remember where I was the day she called me, and she's like, Vida, I uncovered all this research. Men are 50% of fertility outcomes, fertility health, pregnancy outcomes, and healthy, like, live births. And I literally, like, it was as if you told me, like, pigs are flying. I was like, it's the most intuitive thing. It was the brain blowing up emoji. It was like, duh. I know it takes two to make a baby, but how could it be that, like, society is completely kind of ignoring one half of the equation? At no point in my journey did my doctor say to check my husband's health or for him to change his lifestyle. If I'm honest, he wasn't as healthy, quote unquote, as I was. I was doing all the right things. He was drinking, smoking, eating fast food, doing the things, and I'm, like, maniacal on the other end of that spectrum. And so it's crazy to both of us that this just wasn't even a point of conversation yet. And when we incepted this brand, so the other research being that, like, men who take high dose antioxidants have a 4x likelihood of helping their partner have a healthy pregnancy. And so we literally couldn't turn back. That was, like, the impetus of WeNatal. We're like, okay, it takes two. Fertility should be a team sport, and it two should prepare, take that, chunk of time, prep their bodies, lifestyle, nutrition, all the things, and, like, come to healthy outcomes. And we know we're living amongst a fertility crisis. It wasn't just Ronit and I miscarrying, our friends, our family, the birth rates declining across the globe. This is not like a LA thing, a US thing. It's truly like, if we care about the future of humanity, we knew we had to do something, and it helps shed some optimism in a very stressful state. So that's kind of how it started.
Wow, I love it. It's an amazing story. You and I shared some email, and if you wouldn't mind, I'll tell my story real quickly as
Please.
well. So yeah, so me and my wife moved to LA right after college, got married. She was a marketer at Warner Brothers. I was a advertising sales executive, running around town, wheeling and dealing and working with brands and agencies. And we decided to try for our first daughter, or well, our first child, in our late 20s, basically. And had a similar experience. We got pregnant after 5 months. Went past the time to where it made sense to start socializing that and telling people. And then sadly, she did have a miscarriage as well.
So sorry.
Um, no, yeah, totally. I mean, we have three healthy kids now, which is the great, the ending of the story. But as it's very traumatic in real time, both for the woman
Mhm.
and the father.
Totally.
And yeah, so we went from that, that miscarriage to 15 months of infertility, eventually to the point of actually, going to UCLA fertility clinic and starting to investigate, in vitro and other interventions. Another really hard part is, I think, our peer group at the time, we were the first ones in our kind of immediate friend group to start trying and to get pregnant. And
Mm-hmm.
then we had the miscarriage, and then everybody around us started getting pregnant. And I think like
Oh,
part of the thing is, I think, people heard our story and they were like, oh my gosh, like we're not as young as we think we are. Maybe we're not in the optimal years of fertility. Let's start trying. And then, a lot of our peers and our friends started getting pregnant, which was
it's
totally
hard.
impossible, really hard for my wife to deal with. She wanted to be supportive, she wanted to be there for friends, but at the entire time, like every pregnancy announcement is like a stab, with another
Totally.
an unintentional stab of the knife. But what we ended up doing, what I think the good part about going to UCLA fertility was, we started to test for the whole contributors to the situation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So my wife underwent significant testing, and I underwent significant testing, and the conclusion was, my wife was fine. She was in great health, like you said, like you and your friend. But I, unfortunately, was the contributor to low fertility outcomes. Basically, just had low sperm count, and probably due to lifestyle, same thing. My wife was very, organic foods, very intentional about
Mm-hmm.
kind of prepping for, like, organic foods, no coffee, no sugar, no alcohol, supplements, all this stuff. And me, I was just kind of, out there living my best life still to some degree. So, the part of it where my wife didn't want to go through fertility was drugs and hormones, right? So we opted out of Clomid, we opted out of
Mm-hmm.
IVF,
Mm-hmm.
but we did opt into IUI, and then but no drugs. And then my wife also basically told me, like, your life as you know it is over, and you're basically like reinventing your like, you will be on a regimen that I prescribe moving forward, because you've been the culprit. You're at least
Yeah.
50% or more responsible. So I
Totally.
totally understood that, totally went into it. But sadly, at the time, there was no WeNatal.
Mm-hmm.
We had to do our own research, and I was, basically, I basically went to no coffee, no alcohol, no sugar, fruits, vegetables, and fish was the only thing that I was
Yeah.
allowed to eat. And then, also surprisingly, when we were doing the research on how to treat fertility naturally,
Uh-huh.
most of the research out there that you could find online was about farm animals. There was nothing about humans. Like, you couldn't find
Interesting.
natural, holistic ways to treat infertility in people. So it's like, oh, well, they give cows wheatgrass and they give this animals that. So my wife, like, every time we stopped a juice store, we would both go in and have a wheatgrass shot. And I was taking all sorts of supplementation. I wish I could tell you everything that we were doing at the time, but I remember wheatgrass being a big part of it. But the other component was lifestyle, right? Like, you
Yes.
know, just stopping bad behavior and getting into healthy behavior, healthy exercise patterns. And amazingly enough, my numbers doubled
Mm-hmm.
in perform like every month, every 30 days that I maintained this lifestyle and this health and wellness regimen. My numbers doubled. And then by the second IUI, or by the first IUI treatment, and the second, month of me being on this, protocol led by my wife, we got pregnant, and that's my daughter,
Wow.
who's 11 today. So
Oh my gosh. First of all, I love your wife. I feel like she
yep.
was so ahead of her game. Because now there is, thank goodness, way more research around this, at least on humans, and we're
Yep.
learning so much. But we say at WeNatal, men are like, they are so lucky. They have this superpower, as you saw, that it's
Hmm.
not forever, right? And by the way, you're a champ for putting up with that protocol. My husband was too.
Oh, it
He
was
listened to
great.
all the things,
Yeah.
but it's not
Hmm.
forever. But every like 72 days, you guys are completely regenerating a brand new batch of sperm. So the diet, the
Crazy.
lifestyle, all those things, you literally saw your parameters. And we see this on WeNatal all the time. Hundreds and thousands of men are emailing us that like their parameters and they're doing nothing differently. And you were changing a lot of things. But WeNatal alone, the antioxidants are completely transforming their parameters, doubling, tripling. And there's tons of research that these antioxidants work, and I would say she was a pioneer ahead of her game, because even what's shocking is that it's truly still to this day for couples undergoing IVF, around 25% aren't even checking the male partner, which is still pretty
Mm,
mind-blowing to me, because it does take two, and both of us should be under the microscope and checking out what we can do to better our odds. And so there's still a lot of research and education that we're very passionate about spreading, but you guys were ahead of your time, and you were a complete champ.
I love it. Well, look, for how much, suffering my wife was going through, just emotionally and stuff like that, as a husband, I would have done anything to get her
Totally.
out of that, get her
Oh,
out of that place of suffering. So the sacrifice of major lifestyle change was, for only ended up needing to be for 60 days for us, was the least that I could do. And hey, I lost 10 pounds without any major exercise change. I just basically changed my diet.
mhm.
But yeah, and I think it's what a great business model for you to be able to, come alongside not just the female side of the equation. And that's what you always see. Like you always think about I think about the marketing in the space, it's always prenatal to women, like whether it's
Correct.
supplements or dietary stuff. But, how awesome that you guys have figured out an opportunity to address both sides of the coin and essentially to market to, the entire population who might be contributing to the pregnancy outcome versus just the woman, even though she may still be the chief household officer or the chief influencer over the buying decision. I imagine men probably come into the funnel and get educated too and can bring their wives along in part of your marketing journey.
We are in the 3 years that we've been a brand, we're seeing more and more of that. When we first launched, we're like, "Are men even gonna take this? Is there a market for this?" We were literally one of the first creating a men's prenatal. And so it's been so amazing to see. Yes, a lot of the purchasers are women buying the together kits, so the his and her together. But now we're seeing, close to 20% of our business just being men alone. And we're seeing more and more men join us on nutrition consults, which are complimentary to any couple who subscribes or any person that subscribes. And so we're seeing, I think, because of this active conversation about men's fertility really coming to the forefront in these past few years, we're seeing what men get way more involved, and it's music to our ears. It's so exciting.
I love that. So tell me a little bit about the product set. And so you obviously have the WeNatal for him and her supplements, which we can see in the background, so beautifully
Yep.
displayed above you. But do you guys also, you mentioned you offer nutritional consulting. I
Yep.
think a big component of what people are really excited about these days in proactive health is blood work and stuff like that. How do you guys take blood work and diagnosis and kind of that part of the equation into what you guys do?
Yeah, it's a great question. All of us coming, we have an amazing medical board, including Dr. Mark Hyman and Kelly Levesque, and all of them who helped us formulate what we thought would be a few months of formulation actually took well over a year, because we were
Wow.
looking at the latest clinical research as it pertains to fertility. And so we formulated what was the best prenatal for him and her on the market when we incepted the brand. And then 6 months later, a peer reviewed research of 200 studies came out. And so we made the hard decision as a young brand to even make it better based on the latest science. And so we
Mm,
reformulated actually 6 months into a brand, which, as I'm sure you can understand, as as a small company, you're changing your packaging, you're doing all the
a
things,
big
but
investment.
our commitment was always to be on the latest edge and innovation of science, and science is always evolving. And so we've already reformulated once. We will continue to do so as there's more research. And our first products were WeNatal for her and him. And because we knew, similar to both of our journeys, but this world of fertility being ever increasing, we also partnered with a dear friend and came out with a manifestation journal, which is ultimately a gratitude journal. It's a journal with a part to talk to your partner about all the things you want to talk about before kids, all those fun questions, but it's really like something to support you in this stressful time. And there's more and more research coming out that gratitude can change your physiology. And we also know that it's mind and body are connected. So it's not just giving you the best supplements for your body. And to your point about blood work, we did a beta and we're actually in the midst of a clinical trial, but there's so much research that shows, a couple months after taking high dose nutrients, you could see your levels rise, whether it's your
Hmm.
sperm parameters, whether you're checking vitamin D or all those parameters. We've had so many consumers write in and give us reviews and all that, but now we're undergoing a clinical study. So maybe the next time we talk, I'll have like hardcore statistics for you, but we partner really closely with our medical board to make sure that every ingredient, every dose is based on research that can like basically change an outcome or change fertility outcomes for him or her.
Wow, I love that. I love that idea of the gratitude journal and thinking about like kind of the 360 approach to
Mhm.
fertility. The part of my story that I didn't share was my second two kids. So when I left Los Angeles and moved to San Diego to Carlsbad, we were in Carlsbad for, I want to say maybe a year before we decided to try for my next kid. And basically, my wife was kind of immediately, batting down the hatches and thinking that we would go to, you know, fertility plus, the wellness side of it pretty quickly because that's what it took to have my first daughter. Well,
Right.
basically, my wife weaned my daughter pretty late. Like I think she breastfed her for like 19 months or something like
It's
that.
great.
So yeah, it was great. Like, her philosophy was, as long as she was willing to keep it going. And then basically the first month that my wife ovulated, we got pregnant with my second daughter. Literally
Oh,
like first time,
wow.
first try. Yeah. So then, it's like, okay, well, what's the difference? What was the difference between LA and a miscarriage and 15 months of infertility and having to do these lifestyle interventions, and maybe enough of those interventions from the lifestyle like actually
Mhm.
kept, and I kept,
Yeah.
doing those healthy things. And I would say that is true. I quit drinking, and I stayed, and I
Wow.
didn't drink ever again. I haven't drank for 10 years
Wow.
because of how good I felt, when I was
When you
when I was 60 days into not drinking. I was like, wow, I have more energy. I'm
Mhm.
clear minded. Like everything's better. Like let's just go on this path. And so I think there's probably that, but I also think the stress component, right? It's like, okay, now we're not really trying.
trying it.
We're just gonna not try anymore and
Yeah.
see what happens. And then boom, it's like, so have you
Can
guys?
I just chime in
Yeah,
on that?
please.
Because I can tell you
Yeah.
countless stories. People who were told they're infertile or even like went as far as getting surrogates because they were told they couldn't have kids. I had another couple who adopted, and then the stress of it is off. Oh, we're told we can't have kids. And then lo and behold, the stress is off and they have one without even trying. I
So
mean, I
crazy.
can tell you countless friends and family who have shared stories, and that tells you alone how much the mental aspect weighs on your body. And even from a biological standpoint, we're all living amongst much more stressful, busy times. And most of us, including myself in a corporate job, your adrenals are running off the charts and your cortisol is insane. That was made for being like chased by a bear, except we're going through it daily. And so you can imagine the havoc it's causing in our bodies. And then sadly, it's like not allowing your body to prioritize conception because it thinks you're in like danger mode. And so even at the very biological sense, your body knows when you're like in a much more relaxed state and it could prioritize conception versus the blood being rushed everywhere because we're like losing our minds on most days. And that's
Yeah,
true of
yeah.
myself.
No, I think you're
So
right. I think the just the stress component of like the concept of we're trying, this is now something we're seeking and actively going after versus the flip side, which is, we're not really, putting any weight into it just yet. We're just gonna
totally,
like, like baby step into it and see what happens. So
totally.
that leads me to my most recent, child.
Yeah.
My son, who was born 2 years ago,
So
who is,
sweet.
they call it an accident, but a happy
Oh,
accident, of course.
of
Literally,
course.
we were done. We thought we were done. I was 41. My wife was 40, we had no concept of, even my wife, when she started to have signs of the pregnancy, she thought that she was in early stage
Menopause.
premenopause.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's
totally.
like, oh, I'm already I'm already shutting down.
Oh
Little did
my
we know
gosh.
that, it was exactly the opposite, which I think is, just another great testament to, it's never too late, it's never too early. Well, there are instances, of course, where it's too early, but, I think so. I think a lot of us wait too long. I think
Right.
I think, trying, obviously, being in a situation where you can, handle that. But I think,
Yeah.
I would, if I could have gone back in hindsight, I would have loved to have tried earlier, had a bigger family, all the things.
But
But
I love what you
yeah,
said
please.
because
Uh-huh.
there's so much optimism in your story is a perfect example. There's so many like really hurtful terms out there when you're past a certain age, like let's say 35, and doctors tell you your fertility plummets, and like you get these things in your head. Even in your own journey, I'm sure your wife seeing all your friends pregnant and like what's wrong
Hmm.
with me, like all these things weigh on you.
Yeah,
So as terms of like geriatric pregnancy or advanced maternal age. And so there's so much to be said that like there is so much within your control. And I think both of you living healthy lifestyles, eating clean, not drinking, all these things play into the fact that you guys had a kid no problem in your 40s, which
I know,
no one
nuts.
talks about. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's wild. And I wanted to ask you, have you found any research into kind of environmental led issues? So one of the things that I if I look, 50/50 is hindsight, but if I look back to, where we were living and what the situation was during our infertility moment, we were living in Toluca Lake, our very first home that we had purchased, two-bedroom bungalow craftsman in the valley, great house. But one of the things that I noticed every now and then is I would like pull back the sofa to like vacuum or pull back a chair, and there were little mold spots on the wall, like there was
Yikes.
moisture. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember when I sold the house, the one of the things that they asked for some remediation to be done because they said that there was moisture or water in the foundation or parts of the
Yeah.
home, which lead me to believe that we were probably dealing with some mold issues
Hmm.
at that house, that we were too young, didn't know what that was, didn't know what to look for. I was asthmatic as a child. It hasn't really affected me as an adult. But during that time, I was starting to buy over the counter inhalers just to
Yeah.
breathe at home. And I
Yeah.
didn't realize I thought it was just allergies. So, how much do you think is stress led, but how much can environment play into infertility issues?
It's a great question. It's the true honest answer. As you know, we've been on a ton of podcasts, Ronit and myself, talking about this global fertility crisis that we're living
Yep.
on amongst. And everyone asks, okay, so what is it? Like, what is the problem? And I think it's
Lots of things, probably.
multifaceted,
Hmm.
but honestly, it's a combination of a couple things, which I'll speak. We're living in a toxic soup, and outside of the mold in your house, and thank
Mm,
God you got out of there because it's probably would have showed up as much more crazy and sadder signs for kids because they're just
mm,
so affected by it. But we've worked with so many pediatricians. Mold is a very serious thing. So if you do find it in your home, it's something to remediate immediately.
yep.
But what we kind of boil is down to, I'd say the top three. Our environment is probably number one. Our air is more toxic. There's chemicals everywhere. There's plastics everywhere, and it's affecting our fertility. And so that's the first one. The
Hmm.
second is what we're putting in our bodies. So what we're eating is nowhere near as nutritious as it once was. So even if you're eating all organic, all clean, and your full-time job is to eat for fertility, we cannot get the nutrients our grandparents did. Eating one orange in our grandparents' generation is equivalent to 8 oranges today, meaning the soils and the nutrition in our food, the soils are depleted of the rich nutrients and minerals. And so, even if we're eating clean, we cannot get the right amount of nutrients we need. And that's why supplementation and good quality supplementation, we could talk about why they're all not created equal.
Yep.
And then topple that with the fact that we're way more sedentary than we've ever been. We're made to move, we're made to be outdoors. And what average Americans spending 90+% of their time indoors and sitting. And so it's that. And then the third thing, which we already talked about, being stress. Stress is such a hard thing for your body to take, especially when you're in fight or flight mode every day. And then topple that with like screen time, which we never had, that's turning off our algorithms of like day and night, social media, kind of this always working mentality, and our mental health being at like an all-time low in the globe. I think it's all contributing factors.
Yeah, no, that's totally makes tons of sense. So let's talk about formulation. So you
Okay.
talked about the antioxidants and the super antioxidants being kind of the killer app, the unlock of your formulation. Can you walk me through a little bit? What do you guys put in this stuff? What's an activator for the female biology? What's the activator for the male
For
biology? Tell
sure.
me a little bit more about what each regiment goes to, and how does that work together in symbiosis to try and
Yeah.
go for a positive outcome.
Yeah, and before I talk about what's in it, we'll talk about
Hmm.
what's not in it. So,
Great.
why we even came out with a supplement was because when we were looking, first we wanted to come out with a men's prenatal because there was truly nothing in the market speaking to men. And then when we pulled back the covers of our own prenatals, we realized there's a ton on the market. However, there's really accessible ones that you'll find at a drugstore, but there's a whole paragraph of other additives,
Mm,
fillers, colors, dyes. I mean, nothing you want to be ingesting, especially when you're trying to have, a healthy baby. And so there was accessible ones, and the nutrients weren't in the right forms. They were not bioavailable. And then we'd see like maybe, ones that were $100+ more a month, 8 to 10 capsules, hard to find either at a doctor's office or something like that, and not a good consumer experience. And so we actually realized there is a level to recreate innovation in this space. And so we came out with a formula that's non-GMO, it's clean, it's pure, it's potent. There's nothing in the other section. So no fillers, additives. And why it's also important is because the supplement industry is not regulated by the FDA. So what that means is that anyone tomorrow can come out with a supplement, put it out there, but there's no one checking to see if what you see on the label is actually what you're ingesting. And
mm,
so you always, no matter what supplement you take, you want a brand that does third-party testing because it actually sends it to an outside party and validates that everything is on there is what you're taking, and there's no heavy metals, toxins, anything that could be like essentially poisoning you. And so we
that's
share a
important.
third, yeah, we do third-party testing. We share from the highest place of integrity. The women's formula has 24 essential bioavailable ingredients. And what that means is that anyone can absorb the forms. Sometimes when they're in non bioavailable forms, your body can't process if you have certain things like MTHFR, which both myself and Ronit have. And so, and close to 50% of the population has. So the forms of the
Wow.
ingredient matter. And things that you should look for, especially in a female formula, choline, because it's so important for baby's brain health. We have iron because most women are depleted in iron. We have all the essential vitamin A, B, C, D, and what is also important is that it's not only nourishing mom to not be depleted pre, during, and postpartum, but so much of your baby's genetics are actually determined at conception. And so, why we say this golden window opportunity for both partners is that 3 to 6 months before trying to conceive is because once you conceive, the neural tubes are closed. And so you
Mm,
want to have a rich, nutrient dense body and like build those reserves before conception. And so we're very passionate about, most people just find out they're pregnant and go pick up a prenatal at the market. And actually, the way we prepare for our wedding or for like our baby shower, we should be spending that same time preparing for trying to conceive, not just like, oh, I'm ready to have a family, let me start trying tomorrow, which was my story. And so for the men, it's high dose antioxidants like CoQ10 is one of the big ones that we hear about a lot. NAC, alpha lipoic acid, all the vitamin A, B, C, so D. These are all things that like completely transform oxidative stress, which the easiest, like layman terms, an apple, it gets brown when you leave it out. That's oxidative stress destroying essentially the apple. Our body is getting that, and the sperm is so sensitive to oxidative stress. So these antioxidants help actually reverse the damage. And so what's also connected, and I think you spoke to it in cleaning up your lifestyle, men's fertility is also related to men's health, and the same for women.
Mm,
And so if you're cleaning up your act and taking high dose antioxidants, you're going to start feeling better libido, hair growth, clear mental, cognition. So it's literally a great sign for just overall wellness, and because our food system is so depleted, even if you're not trying, it's a great idea to be on a good quality supplement, a multi.
I love that. So you've already alluded to it a little bit, but men and women should start thinking about prenatal supplementation, not when they find out they're pregnant, but when they have the anticipation of wanting to become pregnant. And you're saying about 3 to 6 months is kind of is that the customer life cycle in which you would like people to kind of find your brand? Is that 3 to 6 months before trying for conception?
I think ideally, listen, a lot of our medical board would say if you're in a committed relationship and you want to have, it's never too early. 1 to 2 years, you're just building nutrient reserves, and it's really great, especially because the baby does deplete, especially mom, of so many of those nutrients. But yeah, 3 to 6 months is that optimal window on both sides. So we talked about men regenerating sperm every 3 months. And for women, there's a big myth out there that if I'm 40, my eggs are 40 years old, there's nothing I could do to improve it. And the truth is, while the number of eggs you have, we can't change the number, we can change the quality quite a bit. And 100 days
Mm,
before ovulation is when that egg matures. So, similar to men, lifestyle factors, nutrients, all of that can help the maturation process of the eggs and give it a healthier chance of during ovulation. And so both partners 3 months minimum before can really improve your outcome.
wow. And have you guys thought about releasing just a general men and women's, health daily supplement so they're kind of have that always on touch point with your brand versus only
Yeah.
discovering you during the conception journey?
Yes, it's a great question. So I told you 6 months after we reformulated both men's and women. The men is now an amazing multi and fertility supplement. So like I said, the
Wow,
men
that's
can
great.
take it. I give it to my dad, and he's 84.
Let's
So
go.
it's just a high dose antioxidant, right? He's not trying to have kids, but it's a very healthy, especially in midst of like sickness being on the rise, COVID, all the things. You just want to be on high dose antioxidants. For the women, there is a little bit of iron, and it is formulated for preconception, pregnancy, and postpartum. Now, don't be fooled. Ladies, don't stop taking your supplement right when you have a baby. You're arguably going to be more depleted after the baby's taken all the stuff it needs. You're now sleep deprived. You're now maybe breastfeeding. You're now taking care of another human. You need to keep replenishing yourself. And some articles state that postpartum could be 5 to 10 years. And so it is important for moms to continue on a regimen. Now, because there's a little bit of iron, you don't want to take it into your menopausal years. But if you're still in that world, you should be taking it. And similar to your story, 50% of pregnancies are unplanned. So wouldn't you, if there's any chance, want to still be on it so that in that case of that surprise baby like you had, you have all the nutrient reserves, you've put the best insurance policy in place, and you're good.
Pretty smart. I love that. All right, so let's pivot a little bit to your marketing strategy since we have a lot of direct consumer brand marketers and people who
Yep.
love to learn from people who are being successful in other categories. So tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing today. What does your marketing mix look like? How are you guys finding customers more broadly? And then maybe we can drill down to some of the tactics.
I love it. So Ronit and I are both marketers. I have to say that like our passion at Nike stemmed from marketing. And so the
Mm,
inception of the brand was everything brand marketing in mind. And I'll start with our packaging and why that's important. We chose to invest in like the brand aesthetic, a brand designer who understood what we're trying to create. Beautiful glass jars. So much of vitamins is taking them. If you fall behind, you're canceling. And what we were doing in our fertility journeys is hiding, there was like 20 medical looking bottles. I was hiding them in the medicine cabinet. And like on a good week, I was taking it a couple times a week. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah,
like
mine
what
are
we
all
did,
out on a, like some like a 3-tier thing, and yeah, that's like
smart,
if they're out, you take it. If they're in
you
the
take
cabinet, you
it.
don't. Yeah,
Totally. And so what
got to
we
put them by
realized
the
is like if
coffee.
that, then I would take it like 10 times a day. So we wanted to make something beautiful. So one, people would actually like be proud of it, leave it out. And so we created a beautiful aesthetic was the start of the marketing because we wanted consumers to be proud of it and leave it in their kitchen, in their bathroom. What that led to when we incepted the brand is that when people opened the box, we weren't asking anyone to post, but people just started posting because it was beautiful.
Mm,
And vitamins, we disrupted the vitamin space a little bit, right? Like as you see in my background, there's not many bottles that look like that in a vitamin aisle.
yeah,
Probably
it
none.
almost looks like cool candles or something, or
Totally.
it's yeah, and
And
it's like
so
cool color
exactly.
scheme. Yeah,
And it wasn't too feminine, wasn't too masculine, and so that was, like, the beginning. We noticed that we got a ton of initial buzz just by people, posting it because it was a brand aesthetic that was beautiful and disruptive in the space. The
smart.
second thing we did really well is while everyone was focused on paid media and influencer and all that, we were focused on grounding this thing in science and in medicine, and so our influencers were the doctors, the Dr.
Mm,
Mark Hyman's, the nutritionists, the doulas, the midwives, the Kelly LeVex, who's incredible celebrity nutritionist. And we invested in them. Many of them are advisors on our brand, but also like there's nothing more credible than someone you actually trust and admire to tell you what supplement you take. And so we didn't go the usual path of what our competitors were doing, which was a lot of fancy marketing, a lot of VC money. We were bootstrapped, so we grew small
wow.
and sustainably while everyone else was paying tons of money to paid
For
ads, tons of
acquisitions. Yeah.
money. Yeah. And so we started kind of against the grain, if you will, but it created this great base of practitioners now who recommend us. So many OBGYNs, so many fertility specialists, so many of them proudly display WeNatal in their office. And that was the start. Our grassroots efforts was really making relationships and creating community. Lo and behold, 3 years later, we're now just starting to dabble in some paid ads and really ramp up our email marketing, and education is really the root of our brand. So much of our pain and our personal journey was something we didn't want people to feel behind us, and so we invested a lot in Instagram, educating there, and a lot of the content is from our medical board and made it in a fun and easy way to understand. Our emails are super informative. We do a ton of collaboration on our blogs with doctors and all kinds of experts because what we want is to make the road easier for those behind us. And so education is the root of it, and then we actually recently came out with a 11 class fertility master class where Ronit and I sat down with
Mm,
experts, fertility experts, a male reproductive urologist, an OBGYN, a pediatrician to say what they're seeing when the baby is born, so looking at all aspects of fertility and bringing free content to our consumer. And so that's actually free. If anybody is in this stage of life, they can visit wenatal.com/masterclass and see that. But so much of what we're doing is from a genuine place of education and a true mission to create healthy little humans and educate about this huge opportunity for both partners to level up the playing field.
I love it. So it sounds like you're really going after co-creation with
Yep.
experts and bringing in real trusted advisors, because this is a topic where it's just so, you can't be flippant about marketing in the space.
Exactly.
You're dealing with people who are deep down holes of rabbit trails, as we've already talked about, some of the journeys from the researching phase. But people are highly emotional.
Totally.
You manipulate them with slick marketing and messaging, probably at your demise, because you have to really come alongside consumers in this moment of vulnerability and really be a trusted partner with them in your marketing versus trying to message to them or inspire them with like you said, like influencer content and stuff like that. So I love the idea of like how you guys have co-created with these other thought leaders and experts and wellness practitioners. I hear a lot of talking about nutrition and lifestyle, and we've talked about, the mold stuff. We're talking about a lot of the concepts that like kind of come from like what some people call like the crunchy side of like the world, and it's definitely like where my wife. I mean, in full transparency, I haven't taken a pharmaceutical since my 20s. I mainly do acupuncture and Eastern medicine. And so I kind of come from, that
Hmm.
chiropractic, school of like, addressing health and wellness from the perspective of not getting sick in the first place versus like treating symptoms and things like that. I feel like with some of the language that you're using, and when you talk about doulas versus
Yeah.
OGBYNs and some of the people that you work with, would you guys consider yourself kind of in that more holistic, side of the opportunities and things that are available to consumers out there? Would you consider that to be the like? Would you guys show up at like an Expo West in addition to, Founders Made and stuff like that? Like, where do you guys
Yeah.
sit in that, wellness
It's a great
ecosystem?
question. I would say 100% yes to the fact that we believe in root cause medicine, which is let's
Hmm.
try to help support you from our nutrition, from a root cause, not band-aids. And I'm not, I'm so grateful for advanced technologies that have helped people like IVF, IUI, which all of our friends and family have done. But there's so much you can do before even going into those things that can improve your chances. IVF is not 100% success rate. It's
No, not at
30%, and it's
all.
a lot
Yeah.
of money and pain and like not easy journey. And so if we can make your chances even more successful, we believe that there's so much you can do, to your point about lifestyle, nutrition, anything holistic that can treat mind, body, and put the best foot forward over pharmaceuticals and all that. So yes, that is the way we were brought up, especially because of our advisory board and medical board being so focused on nutrition and health and wellness. We believe it. So we've visited Expo West several times. Holy moly, is that
Nice. Hmm.
overwhelming? I think
It's
one day
wild,
will we
huh?
be there? Maybe, but I do think personally, as like also a marketer and brand person, you get lost in there. And so I prefer going
Mm.
same way as Founder Made and like just meeting people and meeting great like-minded brands, meeting people you could collab with. It's a big investment. And I believe maybe because of my Nike days, if I go there, I want to take it over and stand out. And that's like a big burden to make. I don't have the Nike budgets. I have like the startup budgets, right? And we're not VC backed. And so
Sure, sure.
I think it's great. I think it serves a huge purpose. Right now we are D2C primarily. If maybe one day we are looking at retailers, maybe that is a great, it depends on like your goals of what you go there for. Some people go there
Hmm.
looking for distribution, looking for VC money, and so I think depending on what your goals are, it really helps some people. And if I go there, I'd want to stand out and not just be like a little 10-foot table, So I think it's
Yeah, I think
important.
that's a good mindset. Don't just do things because it's the thing to do. Do it because you can do it big and in the right
Right.
way and make a splash and make it worth it.
Right, and depends if you have a need to network and make relationships for whatever end goal, that might be the best tactic for you. So it just depends on, I'd say, what your strategies are. I prefer some of the more niche, smaller shows. Like a Founder Made was so much more manageable to me. I could walk the whole floor in like an hour, meet people, listen to some talks. Um, and so yeah, I mean, there's so many shows these days. And like for me, we could go to like fertility conventions and doctor conventions, which I mentioned are like so much of who we want to really get to know and share the WeNatal difference. And so for us, I think that's a more strategic opportunity and a much more our consumer than an Expo West, which is literally everything to everyone from snack brands to supplements and everything in the middle. And so for me, a bit
Yeah.
overwhelming, but it's
Hmm.
epic. I mean, I've never gotten more free stuff in my life, and I got to try more samples of things. I think I went home with a stomach ache, but it was epic. I mean, it's a definitely a great networking and great just perspective to see who your competitors are, see who's out there, and so I always
Just see
encourage
everything under the
attending.
sun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
attending is,
I
I think, the best thing.
totally. I went this year as a content creator for the first time. I sadly was at another conference for the 2 days before, so I only got to attend one day. But yeah, just walking the halls. I think I did 6 interviews or something like that, just
Oh,
on the fly from different booths. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the a little bit more on the life cycle of the customer. So what do you think about just the mindset of the current consumer when they kind of go like I feel like it speaks a little bit just to like the short attention span that we have as Americans, or as we have as the West, maybe, where everything is expected to be as easy as hitting the Amazon button or the Uber button or the whatever button that gets you your thing, in hours versus days
yeah.
or weeks or months. I feel like we've just kind of overemphasized the idea of things on demand, that we expect pregnancy on demand almost to some degree, because
So true.
yeah, so like and we've talked about some different scenarios today of, being able to work through a timeline and then getting pregnant by accident, getting pregnant pretty fast, upon wanting to. But do you feel like the average couple, or the average yeah, let's say the average couple going into their conception journey, do you think they have reasonable expectations on a timeline, or do you feel like this kind of, Uber culture, the short attention span, is putting undue stress and unrealistic expectations on just what conception should look like?
I think the latter of what you said is very true. I think there is one unreal expectation. There's a lot of misinformation. Fertility is like
Hmm.
this black box of like so many myths that we spend so much time on podcasts and speaking at events trying to help bust and create the proper narrative. I think it's twofold. I think one, a lot of us, including you were very young when you started, but like most of us are having kids later in life. Our
Hmm.
careers, women enter the workforce, we're choosing to put,
To
like have
postpone.
yeah. And
Mhm.
actually I saw some interesting research that's actually showing that 40 is the new 20, that more of us are actually having kids in our 40s than what used to be the trend, which is in our 20s. And so you're seeing this shift happen. And therefore, what society is kind of inherently telling you is that you're late, you need to start trying. If you're married, start trying tomorrow, like whatever. Even not if you're married. If you're 35, just like start, go try. And there is so much value in like pausing that for 3 months and actually putting your best foot forward for all the reasons we discussed. There is no guarantees any route you take, but anything you can do to prep both you and your partner can only help improve the chances. And it's not just about getting pregnant. Got pregnant multiple times, but I lost the pregnancies, and
Yeah, right.
probably due to chromosomal errors, which were us not preparing. And I don't know,
Hmm.
you never know for sure, but the reality is the genes you pass on to your kids, if you have a girl, it's passed on multiple generations. And you want to give them, you want to have the super baby, the smart baby, you want all the things. And so inherently, like we take time to prep for a wedding and look our best. We spend months designing registries or baby nurseries, but it's like, why is it when it comes to this one thing, to your point, we have no attention span and we're like, and I think it's a little bit that society has told us it's late and you need to go. If you're ready, go. And we want to train the opposite, that like you have a golden window of opportunity. Take 3 months, both of you prepare. It's not forever, but really that time frame can set you up from like future heartache or future failed IVF or other failed attempts. And so whatever your chosen method is, that window of opportunity can only help you have better outcomes. So it's
Do you,
kind of counterintuitive to what we're thinking and feeling and what the society is telling us, which is most of us is telling us that we're too old.
do you think people run to traditional fertility, such as medical, IVF, hormone-induced laboratory settings? Do you think people move to that intervention too soon in the journey, or should they try other things first?
I would advocate to why not try other things first, to the point that IVF is not a sure thing, as nothing
Hmm.
is. and it's only about a 30% success rate. And there's a financial burden, there's a biological burden, there's like so
Hmm.
much it does. And so I don't, there's zero judgment. This technology, all assisted reproductive technology, I have to say, is like, I'm the biggest fan. It has allowed
Yep.
so many people to become families who might otherwise have not. But the truth is it for everyone? No. Is it a multi-billion-dollar industry? Absolutely. Is there some fear mongering? I think so. There is
Hmm.
places that you've seen the research. They have quotas for egg freezing, quotas.
Mm.
So they're pushing people to do stuff maybe a little bit outside of what they want because they're scaring them. And so all I would
Mm.
say is just be your own advocate, do your own research. There is so much that can be done. Your age is one part of the equation, it's not everything. The lifestyle, the toxins in your world, anything that's within your control, you could start to play with to make yourself feel better going into whichever version you want. And I would just say if you can give yourself a little bit of time, even 1 month, it can only help. And so rushing into it just from my own personal experience and the thousands of couples that we've heard from WeNatal. I mean, I have one customer, Cassie, who had the most inspiring story, and she's allowed us to share her story. She had 14 rounds of IVF that failed.
Mm.
And as a
Holy
last
cow.
resort, 14 rounds. I can't even imagine what she's been through with her partner. As a last resort, her doctor said, maybe you should try changing your diet and nutrition. She found functional medicine, she found WeNatal, and went on to have a healthy baby girl.
Mm.
And so that my only point in saying that is that Cassie's story, that should have been the first resort. Why was that
Yeah,
the last
totally.
resort?
Ugh.
And there's more and more research about really the role of like reducing toxins, lifestyle, nutrition, how much these items can only help whichever route you go down.
Yeah, no, I think that's so I mean, what a story. And you talked about interventions where people have gone surrogacy routes and then gotten pregnant at home after they were told they were completely infertile or it's
Correct.
impossible. So I think, if anything, I think let's just be humble as an industry. Let's be honest that we don't know everything.
Mhm.
The science, as it were, is not conclusive in any direction or the other. And at the end of the day, I think the idea of patience and trying to maintain a proper mindset of just humility and reasonable expectations will do a lot to kind of set people up for mental health and wellness that will help facilitate better outcomes. Can you talk about social media? How does it benefit you guys as a marketing channel? But have you also seen it, be negative, as far as impact, as far as like putting undue pressure on
Yeah.
women? Like, what's the positives and the negatives of social media as it pertains to a marketing channel for you guys, but
Yeah.
also maybe some watch outs that you see in
Yeah.
the broader ecosystem, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. It's a great question. Social media, I think, is the biggest blessing and a curse at the same time. I'm sure you can agree. First of all, it's made the ability to educate and like small appetitable content so great. Like we could share the men's story, and we see anytime we post something about men or sperm health, the shares are like off the charts. So it's like, there's an appetite for people to learn. And also, like you said, it's a very vulnerable state when you're trying to have a baby and wanting to put your best
Hmm.
foot forward. So there is a consumer who wants to learn, who's willing to like open up. And so it's given us this ability to share the content from doctors, our own content, the reason why we needle is different, and just constantly share easy, small, really like without going too medical, too deep into the research. It's given us this platform to really share the best of the best with our consumer and educate, which I mentioned is like a pillar of our brand. The curse is that like the algorithm changes daily. You don't want to have all
Mm.
your eggs in one basket. One day Instagram loves you, the next day it's blacklisted you. And so like there's a day that you say one wrong word or something controversial, and so it's a tool, but as with I'd recommend any marketing mix, you can't have all your eggs in one basket. So Yes, it's a great tool, but make sure you're also really ramping up your email marketing. We're just dabbling in TikTok. People love TikTok. We've heard
Mm,
things about Pinterest is such a beautiful world. And so there's kind of depending on who your consumer is for your brand and where you think they are, meeting them where they are is probably the most crucial thing you could do as a marketer. And sharing the voice of not only your brand, but of other consumers, success stories. Like there is such a rich mix of what goes into successful social media platforms, and we try to share the medical knowledge, the customer reviews, the anecdotes from experts. And so I'd recommend that it's great, but you also need to make sure you're hitting them through multiple voices. And also, the best marketing, in my opinion, is still to this day the old school word of mouth marketing. So, when doctors are
100%.
recommending you, when other influencers, and so that's why it is one of our tools. It's not the only tool. Instagram is where we have our biggest following, but we are still dabbling in the other world and trying to make sure we're meeting people where they're at.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Vida, it's been an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed learning more about your story, both personally with your struggles and overcoming them, but also just the amazing business that you built through, you know, taking on those struggles head on and bringing a solution to the public at large. So, congratulations on all the success that you're having. If people want to learn more, where would you like to send them, and where should people connect with you directly if they want to form some type of a business partnership or relationship?
I love that. So wenatal.com, you can geek out on our ingredients, you could geek out on the brand, like anything you want to know is on wenatal.com. Our blogs on there have such rich content. Our Instagram is probably our biggest platform at we_natal. And I'd say we answer every DM on Instagram and every email. So care@wenatal.com is our email and it will easily get to us. So feel free to reach out, whether it's brand partnerships, you have a follow-up question, whatever it is, you can tag me in that email. Happy to respond to everything. And thank you for having us. It was so fun sharing our stories. And I truly hope it helps everyone behind us and creating the families that they wish to have.
I love it. Well, thanks again. For everybody who's following along at home, if you enjoyed the show, if this is your first time watching, you found us somehow via sharing or the algorithm, don't forget to subscribe or follow so you can see more stories from great founders like Vida. And if you give us an honest review, that's how the show finds a larger audience organically. And most importantly, if there is somebody out there in marketing land who is building a direct consumer company and you think that they would learn from some of the insights that Vida shared today. But most importantly, if there's someone out there in the world who is dealing with a fertility struggle, or hey, maybe they're not even struggling, maybe they are just in that family planning mode and they know that they want to build a family and have a family in the future, why not give yourself the best possible chance that you have to have the most successful pregnancy and the best kids and the best outcome that you could possibly have? What do you have to lose? Share this episode so they can learn more about WeNatal. Vida, thanks so much for coming on. We'll hope to stay in touch.
Thanks so